Picture this. You're sitting in a mid-morning strategy meeting, right? The room is packed, the tension is super high, and a massive, complex problem has just been thrown onto the table.
Oh, we have all been in that exact meeting.
Right. And it's that specific bottleneck that's been stalling your department for months. Everyone is looking at the data, scratching their heads, throwing out like half-baked suggestions, and then it hits you.
The light bulb moment.
Exactly. You see the missing link. You have the solution. It's a great idea. It's clear, strategic, exactly what the team needs to get unstuck. But as you draw a breath and open your mouth to speak, a very familiar, very loud little voice in your head whispers, "Wait, you're just a junior analyst."
Yep. You're not a director, so keep quiet.
Exactly. You don't have the title for this. You've only been here 2 years. Who are you to chime in right now?
So you just will swallow the idea, you close your mouth, you nod along, and you stay totally silent.
You stay totally silent. And then the real kicker, 10 minutes later, someone else, usually someone with a much fancier title, pitches almost your exact idea. And the room just erupts.
It's just a crushing feeling. People are nodding, taking notes, praising the insight.
Have you ever been there? Because, I think anyone who has ever operated in a professional, corporate, or even academic setting knows that exact sinking feeling of watching your own potential evaporate just because you didn't feel you had the authority to claim it.
It is devastatingly common. And what's crucial to understand here is that this hesitation, it's usually rooted in a deeply ingrained yet entirely flawed societal assumption.
Which is what, exactly?
Well, we're conditioned to believe that our value, our agency, and our right to speak in a room are strictly dictated by the words printed underneath our name in an email signature, or on a business card. We conflate a job title with permission to lead.
And that feeling, that hesitation, that crushing imposter syndrome is exactly what we are dismantling today. Welcome to our deep dive.
I am really looking forward to this one.
Me too. Because we are exploring the underlying philosophy of the Aspiring Leaders Program, or the ALP, which is a framework created by Amaning CareerLift.
It's a really fascinating methodology.
It really is. We are looking at the core blueprint of this framework. It's specifically designed for adults 18 and over, and uniquely tailored to empower individuals from diverse and ethnic minority backgrounds.
And the whole ethos of the framework, the approach we're looking at, is just so calm, emotionally intelligent, and highly professional.
Yes, absolutely. It's about taking people who have immense latent potential, but who chronically feel overlooked or marginalized, and fundamentally transforming how they show up in their world.
What stands out immediately about this methodology is its complete rejection of traditional aggressive leadership tropes. Like, it's not about handing someone a megaphone, telling them to adopt an alpha persona, and shouting louder than everyone else in the room.
Right, none of that hustle culture stuff.
Exactly. This framework treats leadership as an internal, quiet transformation first. It's about building a specific kind of psychological resilience that allows a person to claim their space authentically without needing to perform a version of themselves that feels, foreign or exhausting.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand how the ALP framework actually transforms people, we first have to completely tear down the biggest myth that they tackle right out of the gate.
Which is the definition of leadership itself.
Yes, the philosophy states, unequivocally, that leadership has absolutely nothing to do with the title.
Nothing at all.
It has nothing to do with your position on an organizational chart or the size of your budget.
They redefine leadership entirely by moving it from a noun to a verb. It's not something you are by decree, it's something you do through practice.
So what does that practice actually look like in this framework?
Well, in this framework, leadership is defined as a combination of specific cultivatable traits, things like mindset, self-awareness, growth, courage, consistency, and influence.
Notice that manager or vice president or head of department is nowhere on that list.
Right, which is highly counterintuitive to how corporate culture usually operates.
Oh, completely. Usually you spend 5 years proving you could do the job just to get the title, and only then do you feel allowed to make decisions. It reminds me of like a fitness analogy.
Oh, I love a good analogy.
Well, waiting for a leadership title before you start acting like a leader is like waiting for an official certificate in the mail to prove you are legally allowed to run. You don't need a marathon bib to start jogging.
Very sad.
You just put on your shoes, go outside, and put one foot in front of the other. The act makes you a runner, not the bib. But I do have to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
If we are completely separating leadership from positional power without the official title, How do you actually get anyone in a professional space to listen to you? Like, how do you implement a new strategy or change a team's direction if you literally do not have the authority to mandate it?
What's fascinating here is the psychological distinction between authority and influence. Authority is exactly what you just described, a top-down mandate granted by a title.
People listen to you because they have to.
Right. They comply because you control their paycheck, their shift schedule, or their annual review. But as any seasoned executive will tell you, compliance is not the same thing as engagement.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You can force someone to sit at their desk.
But you cannot force them to care, to innovate, or to give you their best ideas. The ALP methodology focuses entirely on influence. Influence is a magnetic force rather than a blunt instrument.
I really like that, a magnetic force.
Yeah, it's an authentic practice that draws people in. When you operate with high self-awareness, when you're incredibly consistent in your core values, and when you demonstrate the courage to speak truth thoughtfully and constructively, people naturally start looking to you for direction.
So authority is forcing someone to follow you because of a structural hierarchy, but influence is making them want to follow you because they trust your judgment and respect your consistency.
Precisely. And the beauty of influence is that it is freely available to anyone, regardless of their rank or tenure. Let's look at a practical example.
Okay.
Think about the people in your own life or workplace who you naturally go to when a project goes sideways and you need advice. Are they always the highest ranking people in the building?
You know, often they aren't. They're usually just the peer who always stays calm under pressure.
Right. They are the colleague who listens actively before offering a solution. They are the individuals who have mastered that exact combination of growth, courage, and consistency. That is the archetype this framework is trying to cultivate.
So the philosophy basically argues, don't wait for the promotion to start leading.
Exactly. Lead now through your mindset and your influence. The career progression, the visibility, and the titles simply become a natural, inevitable byproduct of the value you are already providing.
That makes perfect logical sense on a theoretical level. Here's where it gets really interesting, because if leadership is truly just a mindset, and if the tools of influence are freely available to anyone at any level, why is it so incredibly hard to actually adopt? I mean, why do so many highly competent, brilliant people stay quiet in that meeting room?
This brings us to the psychological hurdles. The methodology points out that its target audience, despite having immense capability, often deeply doubts their own potential.
Right, they struggle with baseline confidence, they wrestle with massive, paralyzing imposter syndrome.
Yes, and they live with the painful daily reality of feeling overlooked in professional spaces. And this is where we have to pay special attention to the context of who this framework is explicitly designed to support.
Individuals from diverse and ethnic minority backgrounds.
Exactly. This isn't just a generic, pull yourself up by your bootstraps motivational seminar. It's acknowledging a very specific sociological reality. When you're a minority in a professional space, the barrier to visibility isn't just in your head.
It's systemic.
It is frequently systemic. You may look at the executive board and not see a single leader who shares your background. You might have experienced the very real phenomenon of having to work twice as hard to get half the recognition of your peers.
Oh, and just the mental load of constant code switching. That alone must be exhausting.
It is. The feeling of being overlooked isn't a delusion. It is frequently based on very real, historically validated lived experiences.
And that highlights a tragic contradiction in the source material, because we are talking about individuals who desperately want to grow.
They do. They want to improve their communication, take on strategic roles.
And they want to make a greater impact on their organizations. But they feel entirely paralyzed. They have the drive, but they feel they lack the blueprint for how to unlock their own potential without compromising who they are. Which makes me ask a really foundational question about how we view self-doubt.
What's that?
Is imposter syndrome a personal failing, a lack of willpower, or is it just a completely logical, natural reaction to being constantly ignored or underestimated by your environment?
It is entirely the latter, and understanding that is the crux of this entire philosophy. If an environment continually signals to you either explicitly through passed-over promotions or implicitly through microaggressions and a lack of representation that you do not belong at the decision-making table.
Your brain will eventually internalize that message as a survival mechanism.
Exactly. Imposter syndrome in that specific context is just the brain doing its job. It's a defense mechanism. It's saying the environment is rejecting us, so we must not belong. Keep quiet so we don't draw negative attention.
Wow. What the ALP framework recognizes is that you cannot simply command someone to be more confident when their lack of confidence is a deeply learned, rational response to their surroundings.
Right.
So it's essentially an issue of psychological safety. You can't expect a nervous system that is trapped in a fight or flight response to suddenly produce calm, strategic, confident leadership. You can't outmotivate a nervous system.
That is exactly the issue. Telling someone dealing with systemic imposter syndrome to just be confident is not only unhelpful, it actually compounds the problem because it invalidates the very real hurdles they are facing.
It makes them feel like their fear is just another thing they are failing at.
Exactly. And this connects directly to why the ALP methodology insists on a very specific environment for its participants. The approach emphasizes a calm, intentional, and highly reflective space. It deliberately moves away from the high energy, hyped up, aggressive motivational style that dominates a lot of corporate training.
Right, because usually professional development stuff is all about pumping you up. It's loud music, a charismatic speaker running around a stage, getting you to high-five your neighbor and scream affirmations.
Which is completely ineffective for this specific demographic. Hype is a temporary adrenaline rush. It does absolutely nothing to neutralize deep-seated systemic self-doubt.
Yeah, if your imposter syndrome is rooted in a feeling of being fundamentally unsafe or unseen in corporate spaces, a loud, aggressive pump-up session is just going to feel inauthentic, jarring, and exhausting.
A calm, reflective, emotionally intelligent environment signals safety. It says to the participant, you don't have to perform here. You don't have to adopt an extroverted alpha persona to be seen as valuable. Creating that emotionally safe, authentic sanctuary is the absolute foundational requirement.
You have to lower the defensive walls and regulate the nervous system before you can even begin the work of changing the mindset.
Exactly.
That reframing completely changes how I view professional development. So the first step is establishing this psychological sanctuary. But how do we actually do the work once we are inside it? We know what the internal blockages are, we know they are valid, but what is the actual toolkit for dismantling them?
Well, the methodology outlines some very specific premium tools. Mentoring moments, professional coaching conversations, collaborative teamwork, strategic discussions, and a point they emphasize heavily reflective journaling.
Yes, I noticed that. Reflective journaling. It sounds like a sports training montage, but tailored entirely for your emotional intelligence.
Yes, it is a highly structured architecture of transformation, and it deliberately mixes deep, solitary internal work with guided external collaborative work. It recognizes that insight without action is useless.
But action without insight is reckless.
Exactly. You have the scene of the athlete running drills by themselves, then studying the playbook in the dark, then the coach giving the tactical breakdown, and finally the execution on the field.
But I do have to push on one of these tools. How does sitting quietly by yourself doing reflective journaling actually translate into being a confident professional speaking up in a high-stakes strategic meeting?
That's a fair question.
Because journaling feels so private, almost therapeutic. How does writing in a notebook help you command a boardroom?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of behavioral psychology, the journey of self-awareness fundamentally requires you to encounter your own mind objectively. When you are in that high-stakes meeting and you get that overwhelming urge to stay silent, like the scenario we opened with,
Yeah, that paralyzing feeling.
that is an automatic, lightning-fast reflex. Your brain is running a subconscious script that was written years ago. Reflective journaling is the mechanical process of dragging those invisible subconscious scripts out into the light where you can actually examine them.
Oh, I see. You're basically forcing your brain to put its irrational fears on trial.
Exactly. Let's look at a concrete example. Imagine a participant, let's call her Sarah, a junior analyst. She has a great idea for a new forecasting model, but she freezes in the meeting. In her journaling practice that evening, she doesn't just write, I had a bad day.
Okay.
The framework prompts her to write, I wanted to share my forecasting idea today, but I didn't. Why? And through the process of writing, she uncovers the script. I didn't speak because I assumed the director of finance would dismiss me because I don't have a master's degree.
Ah, so she has identified this specific trigger.
Yes. Now, she takes that journal entry into her one-on-one professional coaching session.
And the coach acts as the objective third party to help deconstruct it.
Yes. The coach doesn't just say, oh, don't worry about it. The coach asks, what actual empirical evidence do you have that the director dismisses people without master's degrees? Has he ever done that?
Or is that an assumption based on an insecurity?
Exactly. The coach helps Sarah logically dismantle the fear, reframe the narrative, and then literally role-play how to introduce the idea next time. So the private emotional reflection of journaling and the intimate strategic work of coaching are the scaffolding.
They're the foundational steps that actively construct the new neural pathways of courage and consistency.
Yes. The next time Sarah is in that meeting, she isn't relying on willpower. She is relying on a new, tested internal script.
That makes the process so much more tangible. It's like you are building a ship in a dry dock before you put it out into the ocean. You can't fix a leak in the hull while you're actively sinking in the middle of a turbulent boardroom meeting.
That is a perfect analogy.
You have to fix it in the quiet, safe moments of journaling and coaching first, so the vessel is watertight before it ever hits the waves.
Yes. You're repairing and fortifying the hull in a controlled environment. You cannot sustain external strategic leadership without doing the internal emotional groundwork first. If you try, you just end up with burnout or chronic imposter syndrome because you are constantly fighting against your own unexamined fears.
So we've built the leader internally. We've taken the imposter syndrome, deconstructed it in the dry dock, and replaced it with quiet, consistent courage and a new internal script. Where does that leadership actually manifest externally? We are moving from the training ground to the real world.
Mm.
And this is part of the framework's philosophy that I found completely fascinating.
It's very unique.
The methodology does not just care about helping you climb the corporate ladder or get a better performance review. Their stated goal is to cultivate influence across a wide array of environments. The workplace, absolutely, but also in business ventures, at church, at university, and in the broader local community. So what does this all mean?
This is perhaps the most vital and differentiating piece of the entire puzzle. They are looking at the individual not just as a corporate asset or an employee ID number, but as a whole, multidimensional human being embedded in a complex social fabric.
To me, it says they aren't just trying to build slightly more efficient middle managers. They are trying to build community pillars. But I want to challenge this approach for a second.
Okay, let's hear it.
If someone is dedicating time and energy to a professional development framework, like the Aspiring Leaders Program, why is it so important that the methodology extends its reach into places like a local church council or a university alumni group? Like, if you are trying to accelerate your corporate career, doesn't focusing on community influence just dilute your professional impact?
This raises an important question about the fundamental nature of authenticity. Authentic leadership, the kind that relies on influence rather than authority, cannot be compartmentalized.
It isn't a switch you can flip.
Exactly. You cannot be a deeply self-aware, courageous, and emotionally intelligent leader at the office from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then somehow turn all of those traits off when you go to your neighborhood association meeting or your church group on the weekend.
That makes total sense.
If leadership is truly a mindset, as this framework defines it, then it is a permanent alteration of how you interact with the world. It travels with you wherever you go.
Which means the skills are entirely transferable. You are learning a universal language of influence.
Precisely. And for individuals from diverse and ethnic minority backgrounds, this holistic 360-degree approach is incredibly powerful. The barriers to visibility don't just exist in corporate spaces, they exist in civic and community spaces as well.
Oh, absolutely.
When a person conquers their imposter syndrome and fully realizes their own agency, that empowerment naturally spills over the borders of their professional life. If Sarah, our junior analyst, learns stakeholder mapping, persuasive communication, and how to navigate a strategic disagreement in a corporate boardroom,
She now possesses the exact toolkit required to go to her local city council and successfully advocate for a larger budget for a community youth program.
yes. Or if a participant learns how to empathetically mentor a junior colleague at work, they can use that exact same emotional intelligence to mentor a struggling first-generation student at their local university.
It creates a massive exponential ripple effect. By empowering the individual at the psychological level, you aren't just improving a company's bottom line, you are inadvertently elevating the discourse, the strategy, and the empathy of every single room that person walks into in every area of their life.
And that represents the deeply hopeful, future-focused vision of the Amaning CareerLift mission. It is a recognition that true empowerment isn't just about individual wealth or corporate profit margins. It's about creating a generation of highly visible, deeply influential leaders who have the capacity to change the culture of their workplaces and their communities simultaneously.
It's about understanding that when someone who has been historically overlooked finally feels safe enough and confident enough to share their unique voice, the entire surrounding ecosystem benefits immensely from their perspective.
It really does shift the entire paradigm of ambition. It moves the focus away from a selfish, what can I extract from my career, to a much broader, who am I becoming through this process, and how does my growth positively impact everyone around me?
It really is a profound transformational journey. We've covered a tremendous amount of ground today, peeling back the layers of this methodology. So let's take a moment to pull all of these threads together.
Sounds good. We started by looking at how the ALP framework completely redefines what it means to be a leader. It intentionally strips away the corporate obsession with job titles, organizational charts, and top-down positional authority.
Instead, it anchors true leadership in a daily practice mindset of self-awareness, courage, and consistency.
Exactly. We established that leadership is an authentic practice of influence, making people want to follow you, not a mandate forced from the top.
And we dug into the psychology of why that mindset is so difficult to achieve, especially for diverse professionals. We looked at how systemic barriers and a lack of representation create a very logical, survival-based reaction known as imposter syndrome, resulting in the painful feeling of being chronically underestimated.
We then explored the specific architecture of how the program actively dismantles those invisible hurdles. By utilizing a calm, psychologically safe, and emotionally intelligent approach, it pairs the deep, private work of reflective journaling with the strategic, guided work of professional coaching.
It provides a dry dock to do the internal emotional repairs, rewriting those subconscious scripts so that the individual can exhibit genuine external courage in high-stakes environments.
And finally, we saw how that transformation refuses to stop at the office door. The ultimate vision of this framework is to help individuals build a robust, authentic voice that elevates every community they touch, whether that's advocating in the boardroom, leading at a university, or guiding a local community group.
It's a deeply empowering mission because the core underlying message is simply this: the capability, the intelligence, and the potential you are looking for are already inside you. You do not need a promotion, a title, or anyone else's permission to validate it. You just need the right framework to safely uncover it and unleash it.
It serves as a powerful reminder that the tools for genuine influence, empathy, courage, and self-awareness are always in your hands, regardless of where your name currently sits on the company directory.
So, to you, our listener, as we wrap up this deep dive into the philosophy of the Aspiring Leaders program, I want to leave you with a final practical challenge to mull over. We opened today by talking about that tense meeting room, the one where you had a brilliant idea, the clear solution, but you stayed silent because you felt you didn't have the right title to speak up.
A very familiar feeling.
Based on everything we've discussed,
Yeah.
and the realization that true leadership requires absolutely no title, what is one specific space in your life right now where you have been quietly, perhaps subconsciously, waiting for permission to lead?
That is a great question to ask yourself.
Whether it's a stalled project at work, a disorganized committee in a community organization, or even an unresolved dynamic within your own family, where are you waiting for a title to grant you authority instead of using your character to build influence? And more importantly, how could you step into that mindset of courage and consistency today? Think about that, because the next time you're sitting at that table and the right idea hits you, we want you to speak.